So now something that I've been thinking about came up over the last 48 hours. Moms who married a Republican dude who times got tough, you thought, what is this guy talking about? Don't you feel better now? Wow. You actually have a mate who is with you that knew this shit was coming. Him and his friends knew this shit was coming. So now, a lot of you should really start thinking along those lines. My man knew what was coming. His friends knew what was coming. None of this was conspiracy theory. None of it was theory. It wasn't theoretical. There was a pattern of behavior. So I was on the left when I started to see this pattern of behavior. Because I doubted in general, because of being from the old left, in general, I did not have faith in a thing called the government. There's a lot of people that now they don't have anything else, and that was something I had to really think about. Eventually it became, no, I believe in me. I know this isn't adding up. This is a long time back. Like when Stefan Molyneux was like the Delphic oracles saying, know thyself, and that it goes back that was a saying from the Greek world, from the ancient world. So when all these people were looking for some kind of motivation, they wanted to, find their deep internal whiteness or whatever to, take back America or whatever. And I saw people criticizing Stefan Molyneux, and I'm like, all Stefan Molyneux is doing is applying human thought. He's just taking it to where everybody needs to go, to dangerous thinking that is so not okay anymore. It's dangerous because, as I think especially a lot of you Gen X guys, every once in a while there would be something that would come up that you're like, that's, that an idea would come up, and that you were amazed that even Gen Xers would stifle an idea. It was, I think, kind of first hit a lot of people when the Bell Curve came out. That the Bell Curve was just simply a book that was inherently racist. Now, no one could really, nobody demanded that this was explained. But eventually we found out, no, it wasn't. No, it was actually absolutely solid observational science. This guy was he wasn't even making the information up. He was just taking information that existed and organizing it. Trying to show people that there's a bell curve in intelligence and that it applies everywhere at all times to every race. And no matter where you are, there's going to be some kind of bell curve, and that the women will come in certain places, the men will dominate in other places, and that this is important to know. Because education itself won't matter as much if you have people who simply cannot do it. We're starting to find this out now, that we have legions of college graduates, but they can't think rationally or logically. Liberals who have gone to college overwhelmingly have supported these completely irrational, illogical, and sometimes just preposterous things. All of the hoaxes involving Trump. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't get. Most of these were easily seen through. Most of them didn't make logical sense. That at some point it became a thing of, why would he do that? That's not in his interests. Why would he do that? That's not a part of his character. Like, and that people were basically desperately trying to sort of make him the villain from really very poorly written literature as well. That was another thing that I started, that a lot of us, we started to see this, that poorly written literature villains were what the left was making everything that they didn't agree with. Just the dumbest villains, the silliest villains. So after a while it became, so obviously your guys aren't very smart. This is all becoming kind of clear. Guys are kind of average. And then there's this. There's really something that we have mathematicians on our side. Like, we have people who do the raw math on it. And so one of the things about the raw math that's come out is and it's been a number of books on this too that have started to cover this, is that the raw math of it is starting to show. This really was an excellent way to make sure that a lot of old ladies starve. The path we're on right now is a path to fundamentally starve out the old, to rip off the old and starve them out. That's what's happening. Their retirement is being punished right now. Their retirement savings. All of this is destroying their retirement savings. There's going to be, who knows what this is going to mean for houses. This is a real discussion right now that's happening among economists and financiers with the housing people, because some parts of the country lend themselves to having a second home that you could then either use as a summer home or now and then rent out, or that you have a large enough family that people will use both houses now and then, but it's mostly like a vacation home. And so that's a certain class of people, really, but it's not a small bunch of people. This type of real estate arrangement tends to be in certain places in the country. These are concentrations of retirement money, and what this means is that if people in those areas have a reason to get rid of their second homes, this is going to increase the number of homes in those areas by up to 10 to 20%. That's going to drop the price of homes in important places to live by quite a bit. So places that aren't as important to live, they're going to also see the prices drop. And then that's where it starts. The other is the potential for talent. That what kind of talent do you have moving to your area? Now, if you have industries that right now it's starting to turn out, what does this industry actually make? Like, what does this industry make? What services are they really offering? What products are they really coming up with? IT and informational technology fields are not producing shit. There's a very small number of companies that are producing everything that's worthwhile. And the majority of them, and this is very common in a boom time, you have a lot of people making a lot of money on investment, but they're not producing a product or a service. And this is now something that people are looking at some point, not too long from now. And if this is happening to Twitter, Facebook, Netflix, I'm sorry, that's it. I saw this before. This is the beginning. It's going to start rolling downward, because a lot of these companies, a lot of this is the work that they contract. So these smaller contractors are going to start, once again, just not getting calls. Nobody needs anyone to code anything. Or it's going to be that they'll work for some kind of institutional IT department, like Albertsons Safeway IT department, because it's heavily digitized. Now that's the interesting part, That's where a lot of information technology seems to be going, is actually serving old people who are on retirement. Wanted to bring up to some of you channel people. Guess who has the greatest network of delivery drones all of a sudden? Alphabet. Where did they develop them? Australia during the lockdowns. It is so not a conspiracy, dude. Aren't you glad him and his friends knew it was never a conspiracy and it was a real plot against you, your country, your racial group, and children? Aren't you glad you are married to a real man who knew what the threats to his family were? So that's, yeah. There was, okay, so there's that. What was the other one? What was the other? There's something that had come up in my mind recently over the last 48 hours. Oh, yeah. So once again, it's been proven out. If black people shoot black people, that's not really worthy of discussion. It's only worthy of discussion if some total nut job who wouldn't fit into white society very well, and has like a visceral hatred of people. It only makes sense to make a big deal of it then. And so it's kind of, I want to bring it up in that regard because does anybody see this as insulting? Like, well, a massacre of this sort's fine. Once it's by a different massacrer, then it's a really bad massacre. And that's where we're at now. We're comparing the tan of the murderer to see how bad the murder was. Isn't that kind of insulting? Just to the victim. Like they got murdered no matter what. New York and Chicago were hellholes. There it was. That was the one for 48 hours I was thinking. And you guys deserve it. I actually had to really consider that quite seriously. And to a great extent, a lot of the hellishness is deserved because it was chosen. If people didn't want, you have the vote. You have the vote. You have access to online to all these leaders and stuff. All you need is to choose people who will punish crime. That's literally all you have to do is choose people who will punish crime. And you won't do that because blue enclaves hold criminals in high esteem. And that's why they won't be punished. And that this will just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And the beauty of this is that this whole thing of, this horrible man is this supreme bean soup and, blah, blah, blah. And he did this and he's horrible and he went on 4chan. And the beauty of this is how much it won't matter. That it already doesn't matter. That it already, I love the geese. This is their season. The geese really go nuts in this season. They take over the fields here until the local works people start cutting the grass. That's so cute. Oh my God, I remember being a kid like that. You didn't know why you wanted to just walk next to the girl, but like they're the older girl and you're like just walking next to her for no reason. You don't really understand why, but you just like to. You don't know her, and that's adorable. But there's now really and this was one of the things I was thinking about with the, aren't you glad your husband isn't a theorist, that your husband is a conspiracy expert, and now you live far outside of a blue enclave, and you'll probably never face robbery. Your kids will never have to deal with now all this stuff that you realize, oh, my husband and his friends were totally correct. Oh, wow, my sister is broken. That kind of thing. I mean, that must be hitting people. It must be hitting people now. Like, wow, a lot of people I know are broken. Like, holy shit. And so yeah, and so there was one other thing that was like really oh yeah, that was it. Now that Kevin Samuels has died, so what is Black America gonna do? Oh, he knows them. Oh, okay. I thought he was just like literally just hanging out by the girl. This is so funny. Bring my soccer ball so I can just kick it around. Oh, boyhood. And and I think that's a part of, like, I mean, leave it in the comments. What was something you did that was this inexplicably odd in your boyhood that, like, your mom would ask you, like, why did you do that? And it made perfect sense to you. Like, I would find interesting things on the ground. I'd put them in my pocket because I'd want to ask my parents, what's this thing that I found on the ground? And then it would end up in the wash. And Mom would get furious. Why did you put this in your pocket? It made perfect sense at the time. It made perfect sense at the time. So, the thing that I was thinking about with Kevin Samuels gone is now supposedly all these black women are dragging his name. And it's one of these things of like, I don't think people really understood. Kevin Samuels brought up class, and it wasn't economic class. He brought up American social class. And that's a huge definer of so much, and people don't want to deal with that, and especially a lot of black Americans don't want to deal with this because they can so easily recognize the change in class that has happened within Black Americana, and that the separation of social class in Black Americana is absolutely positively stark. There is almost no gray. You're either kind of a churchy person or you're one of these cats who's more into the street. And it's starting to divide along those lines very strictly. Or you're one of these people who's into this kind of hotep 5%, like nobody knows exactly what it is. It requires an explanation, so it's, are you Christian or are you, so, but when there's black people, we are Christians. That's a simple, easily understood part of Black Americana. You instantaneously know what to and what not to do around them. Like Samoans. You try your hardest to not take Jesus' name in vain around Samoans. Because no matter what kind of Samoans you're dealing with, they fear their mothers and they fear God. And they don't mess with mama and they don't mess with God. So this is this divide in Black Americana until somebody really becomes sort of this new voice to discuss it. It's just a thing, and it's not going away either, because it can't go away, because it's real. It's hard to discuss, but it's absolutely real, and there's just no way around it. There was then a preceding thing that came up called, "Are Black Women Doomed?" Yes, Black women are doomed. What we're seeing, Kevin Samuels' thing about winter is coming. Now this is obvious. An economic winter for the West is approaching. And this is going to be really hard on people who, like he was saying, are mostly in retail. And I mean, when you look at Black Americans, it's the males who are into coding, who are into IT. It's the males who are into physical work that you need the physical power and then the muscle memory and the understanding of the specifics of that kind of work to do efficiently, to keep costs down. And Black women are in retail at inordinately high numbers. So this is, are Black women doomed? Yes, because there is not a cultural change coming that brings nuance and subtlety and grace and honor. Or no, not honor. We have more than enough honor culture. Something less harsh than honor culture. A culture that really has more to do with being genteel. And that's all class. All of that is class. All of that is social class. And I think now this is something that's been a little difficult for me, and I've actually in my mind I've had to try to face why the subject is difficult for me, because on one side of my family I could absolutely talk about the idea of social versus economic class. Are they trashy or not? Are they, genteel people or not? So I find I've been having trouble dealing with it, where I'm seeing it here in a pocket of Americana that's blue Americana, that the idea of social class is collapsing so much that now nobody even knows how to keep their own children safe from deviance. That nobody will even keep the women and children safe from deviance in democratic, progressive America. That women are fundamentally unsafe because people won't behave in a way that it's oh, this dangerous individual is probably going to harm women and children. Then nobody will confront that. So what is that? What are the progressives and the Democrats then becoming? They're becoming kind of these chumps who believe almost anything they're told on the television, and they're too busy kind of getting fucked up to keep their women and children safe.